Most important thing is this pays me well, this business. And to do that, it needs to be very profitable itself.
What's up, Amazon sellers? If you're thinking about scaling wholesale and you want to be using virtual assistants, then my God, today I'm going to be talking to someone who has actually been there, done it, and learned both sides of the equation. And they're going to be sharing everything that they know, the ups and the downs about this experience. Gravy, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. If people don't know who you are, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey?
Hello, Tom. Thanks for having me on again. So, my name's Gravy. My real name's Chris Gunkel, a wholesale Amazon seller in the UK. If you want to find me, I'm on Twitter at GravyFI. Also run a Discord group, a small community, helping sellers in the OA space moving into wholesale. And I've just launched a bookkeeping business actually, but I'm sure I'll mention that later. I've been doing wholesale for probably 3 years now, do about 175, 200k a month. So probably about £2.5 million per year.
Big numbers. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Now, the one thing I really wanted to talk to you about was wholesale virtual assistants. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, you've had ups and downs, you share a lot around it. Like, give me the backstory.
Okay, yeah. So I started off during COVID, like a lot of people did, doing mainly OA and RA, and soon realised that I was frustrated very much with order limits from suppliers, like retailers online. They didn't really want to sell to you. So I gradually got into doing wholesale by looking at packaging of items I was selling, because it was all self-prep back then, doing all the prep myself. And then sort of explored possibilities of dealing directly with these brands and these distributors. And it just opened my mind to the scalable opportunity, really, Tom, with being able to place orders with no limits, both financially and units wise. And these guys actually wanted to sell to me. So it became a lot easier to actually purchase. And it also meant I didn't need to, place 6 units here, 6 units there, 6 units there, and keep doing that repetitive checking out, placing orders. So when I was doing OA, I actually realized I didn't need a lot of virtual assistants to do wholesale, because I could make big purchases across a lot less deals. But it got to a point, Tom, where I was like spending so much time doing administration activities, bookkeeping, and uploading SKUs to Amazon, dealing with invoices, sorting out things at the prep center. I was like, I'm taking time away from actually sourcing and finding good deals. So it was at that point I decided to get in an admin VA for wholesale. So that's really changed my life in that sense. It's just freed up so much more time. Similar time to that, I brought in a sourcing VA as well to help out with finding deals and make purchasing decisions, which we'll get onto in a bit, but that was probably a mistake, letting them make purchasing decisions. The sourcing element became so important because at the time I was scaling very, very quickly, and I was taking loans from Amazon. They were constantly offering them. And in order to keep scaling, you just needed to find more and more deals all the time. So I was trying to focus on new suppliers. Who can I open accounts with? It's not as simple as just going on a website and placing an order. You got to reach out to them, contact them, provide trade references, complete account forms, sometimes go and meet them at trade shows and that. So I was spending a huge amount of time trying to build a wider selection of suppliers that I was, again, neglecting finding deals. So I'd open an account, I'd pass the information on to the virtual assistant, and they would go and find deals from them. And then I would say to them, you can make purchasing decisions. But now that's all changed. I'm the only one making purchasing decisions. I've got one VA sourcing through my current suppliers. I will look at the deals I find, and I will make the purchasing decision, and they can go and place the order. So that's where I'm at now. It's changed quite a bit in 2 to 3 years' time. I did have 2 sourcing VAs at one point, but I cut it down when I just realised I wasn't getting the best out of it.
You had one admin VA, 2 sourcing VAs. Is that right, at your peak?
Yes, yeah, and we were doing 200k plus turnover per month then, and cutting it down to 1, we're still doing like around that 175 to 200 mark. But it does involve me doing a lot more sourcing myself. But it's probably the key thing to do for a business is actually be good at finding the next profitable item and the big deals. I do a lot of the big deals myself.
I've had like an insane, I think 88 VAs, not all in Amazon at my peak, which is incredible. But like if you look at the Amazon business, we talked off air, it's like 20, and it was like, actually you could have 20 VAs, but you could probably have like 3 or 4 who could probably do exactly the same work. But it is really like, and this is the thing I don't think people understand about virtual assistants, is the fact that you get the good ones. Oh my God, it changes the game. But there are so many bad ones. And I think that's a really important consideration. You have to go through them. You have to check and go through them. That's the point.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's we tend to agree that a lot of these virtual assistants in these kind of roles, if you give them a task to do, they will do that task. If you ask them to think about the task and and, elaborate a bit on it and use their own decision making, then not great at doing it. So it can be quite a mundane job role for a lot of people, I think, being a virtual assistant. Some stick at it and some don't.
I don't want to sit here and bash virtual assistants. I think that is that is true of people in the UK, people in the US, for example. It's not really my place to say that, but I've managed thousands of staff across my years in bars, for example, and a lot of people will take direction very well, but literally the direction, they will not have or they do not have the desire, maybe even the ability to go further, and that's fine. But I think for us as business owners and leaders, we have to be able to identify those people who don't have that and probably remove them from the business quite quickly if they are in that function or that role, i.e. where sourcing, buying is quite a key part. I'd love to kind of understand a bit more about your hiring. Tell me about that. When was the right time that you kind of thought, hey, I'm actually going to hire? Define that. What does that look like?
It wasn't anything to do with turnover. A lot of people point at, when you're doing this amount of turnover, hire somebody. I mean, you've got to consider the cost of it, because you're going to be talking anywhere from £500 a month upwards for a virtual assistant. So you've got to consider the cost. But in terms of timing, it was more about how much time a day I was spending doing tasks that didn't actually benefit the business it didn't drive it forward in a financial way. It just took up my time. And you've got to value your own time as a business owner. And I did. And I realised the business isn't moving anywhere at the minute with me doing all this admin. So it's more for me a time thing. If you can free up time by getting a VA in to do tasks that don't financially drive your business forward, that's the key thing for me.
I've realized it throughout many times in my life. It's I feel really busy, but nothing's happening. I'm doing stuff, but nothing's really happening. It's and we get caught up as human beings. We think tasks are the answer, and it's not. It's outcomes. And a lot of the time, focusing on results, moving the business forward is really important. And a lot of the time, it's actually, I just need to build out the processes of this administrative role, getting admin, for example, and then hire someone to do it. And that's what I need, and make it happen. And I think the other danger is the fact that you delegate, and then a lot of people, when they delegate completely 100% and then let go. You can never do that. That's called giving it out. No, you're using leverage, which is I'm checking in to make sure they do it. But what was 10 hours of my time now is 1 hour of checking. And that's the kind of thing. But you can't let go. That's the whole point. What were the kind of tasks that you had for each VA? And what did they do? What are the roles and what are the tasks? You talked about admin and sourcing. What do they do in your business?
Yeah, I'll start with the admin side of things. So we got a very structured system of processes that happen when we buy items. So when items are purchased, the admin VA is going to be recording them on the inventory sheet, because having your own inventory sheet is great for stock take. It's also good for checking your spend, who with, what your trends are, that sort of thing. So that's really important. Uploading the SKUs onto Amazon, so actually getting them on there, putting them on the prep sheet, chasing reimbursements that are overdue, adding cost of goods to things like Link My Books and STK we use, Seller Toolkit. So there's lots of little fiddly tasks that just take 3 or 4 seconds each time. But when you do that 50 times a day, it just kills you. So those are the first tasks that were outsourced, and that saved me hours and hours a week. When it comes to sourcing, the main thing, like I said earlier, I built relationships with suppliers. I'd open the accounts. I think it's really important the face of the company is the person who's actually dealing with that approach to suppliers. When I looked through the price list and worked out these are decent, that's when I'd hand them over to the sourcing VA and said, right, you're going to get a daily stock list from these guys. I want you to upload it into this scanning software or put it into Keeper, and I want you to find some good deals that we can buy, add them to the deal sheet that we got linked to Seller Amp and Google Sheets, and then I'll make the purchasing decisions and then tell them, okay, you liaise with the account manager and order 20 of these, 30 of these, 40 of these. It's a very simple process, and they both know what they're doing on each day. They know what they're supposed to do. And that's probably the safest way to do it, I think. But of course, don't just drop it. It's still an extension of me.
And then also you said you were doing purchasing as well, is that right?
Yeah, so I'm the only one doing the purchasing, making the purchasing decision. So they'll find it, the sourcing VA find a deal that they think's a good deal based on what they've been sent, but it'll be me saying yes or no, and how many units. When it comes to actually paying the invoices, that's something that I'm not outsourcing, actually transferring money to people. So transferring money to suppliers and paying invoices is 100% me. I don't quite trust anybody to do that yet.
I still control that. I think my team will do up to about 50% $15,000. Like that's it. But anything more than that, I generally deal with. And we have lots of checks and balances for it. What about like the challenges that you face with them? Like, the one thing I love about you is you're really transparent and you're honest, and like you're not here like, yeah, VAs are amazing, they solve my problems. You're like, no, like they're a pain in the ass sometimes. And I get it. And by the way, I've had so many problems. But like, tell me about some of the challenges you face with them.
I find quite often with all the virtual assistants I've come across that they don't question things much. You ask them to do something and they will do it. And if they don't quite understand it, they don't say, excuse me, I don't understand that. They'll just think, no, I shouldn't question the boss man. I feel like that's probably a cultural thing. It's frustrating. You often come across the challenges where you've told someone how to do something, you've recorded a Loom video or something, shared it with them, and they make the same mistakes over and over again, and trying to tell them how they can question things without fear of being reprimanded for it is quite difficult. I don't think they're used to that in their culture. I'm talking about Philippines-based virtual assistants. It's a similar thing for you, Tom. Did you find that?
100%. You get a lot of like saving face, being polite. If you hear yes sir, no sir, it means you haven't actually done a good question. There's a part in leadership where it talks about if you're trying to explain something to someone, it's like seek first to understand then to be understood. So your team members should understand what you're saying, and then they should repeat it back to you in a different way to show that they understood it. If the way they repeat back is yes sir, I understand you, and we know this, they don't understand you, but they'll say yes, and then they'll go away and do something that they don't understand. You're like, I don't understand why. Like, this is called stupid. But I've seen that so many times, and it's hard. It's really, really hard.
Yeah, another thing I've started doing the last few months, Tom, is if I get these deals on the deal sheet and I'll look at the graph and I'll be like, that is awful. That's a really bad deal. Rather than saying this is a bad deal, I'll give them the line number and I'll say, would you buy this and why? And get them to explain. If they think it's good, maybe I've missed something. But also, if they realise when they actually think through it, it's not good, I think they can kind of learn from that a bit better rather than me saying this is just rubbish and then moving on to something else. So and a good way of getting over these understanding issues is just to constantly record information for them. I don't have meetings normally. I record videos, give feedback, short videos, and then I ask them to explain what they think about it. I find meetings can be quite difficult to get out of. I tend to talk a lot, like you probably do, and something that's intended to be a 15-minute meeting turns into a 45-minute, hour-long meeting. Whereas if I can just do a short video about it, I tend to keep it more streamlined, I think.
I'll tell you a little trick that we use. We've introduced it in the last couple of months. Obviously I still have purchases, but you can do it for sourcing. Every single deal that we purchase, but it could be submitted, they have to record a quick Loom video going through the process that we have for deal analysis and explain and record how they're analyzing the deal and why they like it. And what's really interesting is if I don't agree, I just watch the video back and then go, you're not right here. And then I'll go like, in this part, you're not doing it right. Please update the process and go back through. And then what we're doing is we're refining the process. And because they have to record it, I can spot check, which is quite good. So that they always hold the standard up high. And really, it's not me telling them it's rubbish. It's them having to prove to me it's good. So I change the onus of like the control or like the authority, not authority, but like, we've all had it where VAs just submit shit deals and they're like, oh, sorry, sir. You're like, did you actually even analyze this? Like, show me the recording of you analyzing this versus the process, because if you follow that process, this would not get through.
That's a great idea. I think I'm going to put that in place because it'll literally take 1 or 2 minutes for each deal. I think that's a great idea.
2 to 5 minutes per deal tops. And by the way, that's even including how many to buy calculations. And the really good part, and the reason why I love doing this, is because we save the videos on the deal sheet, and then when the deal sells, if it sells badly, we go back to the original video and say, what did you learn from this on your deal analysis versus the time now? What would you improve on the process? And again, you're asking questions, you're not making statements. We're asking them to learn. So it's really useful. You've got purchases, same as me. I'm really interested to learn, like, or should we say you did have purchases. Tell me about that. Like, you've had them, you've now stopped doing them. Like, what did you do? What did you learn? And if anyone's looking at doing a purchase now, I'd love to hear about like what advice you have. Maybe I can learn some things.
The sourcing guy is basically making purchasing decisions in terms of I would buy this, but the only thing he doesn't have is the quantities he's going to purchase and the pulling the trigger. So he's still doing the main thing, which is analysing the graphs and deciding, okay, does this fit our ROI criteria? Does this fit our profit criteria? Does it fit our BSR criteria? So what we tend to have, Tom, is what I call the 3 key pillars when it comes to analysing a deal, and that is profit, ROI, BSR. And if you've got two out of them 3 that are good, then as long as we are hitting a minimum profit per month on that SKU of, say, £30 to £50, then it's probably a deal that we should look at. So you can follow the same criteria in your own business if you want to get a sourcing VA and you want to change them into a purchaser. It's like, as long as they follow those criteria and it ticks those boxes, then there's no reason why they can't make the purchasing decision. Now, the only thing to then think about is how many units, and that's a difficult one. I mean, there's different things out there that say different amounts you should have in stock to maximize your buy box probability of winning. The latest things, Amazon emailed themselves, didn't they, and said 6 weeks is the optimum amount of stock apparently that you need in to win the buy box. So everyone have their own amount, like 4 weeks, 2 months, but obviously you got to consider things like the number of sellers on the listing. So it's really difficult, to come up with criteria that works for you, and it's probably trial and error is the best way. But I wouldn't rush into just saying, right, you're finding deals and you're purchasing, because I've had a lot of bad experiences with terrible deals being purchased with way too much stock that I've probably hauled for 3 years. Some of this stock, just can't get rid of it quick enough. It just doesn't sell. Like, honestly, something that sells 2 a month and I've got 300 of them.
There's a really interesting question from a book that I read. I read the one I recommended. The guy lost 100 million. The guy asked him, how do you feel about it? And he said, the way I look at it is, I've just paid for an education and it cost me 100 million for the course. The real question I need to ask is, am I an A student? Did I learn everything that I need to learn? Or did I barely get through and I'm probably going to have to pay for that course again? Because you know what? I just paid 100 million. I really don't want to pay another 100 million. And when I think about that question, it's kind of like, when I make a mistake in my business, by the way, we've made so many. I'm not here to say that I'm God. I'm a disaster most of the time. But like, the question is when we look at mistakes, is like, what's going to change? Because if something doesn't change, it's going to happen again. And whether it be like 300 units of stock that sell 2 per month, for example, we've got to learn from them. And that, for me, changed the whole kind of like, we never used to have any processes. Now I'm so OCD about processes. We video record them. We do time boxing. And in each time box, I want to see the processes that you're using with a link to them, so I can actually see the exact processes that you're working on. And by the way, I'm like, I want to see version 5 to 10, not version 1. Version 1's rubbish. Version 5 to 10 is like, this is actually a good process now. You've refined it. It's a lot better. And I'm always saying, this has gone wrong. What have you learned? Please tell me, and please update the process, and please screenshot and share me what you've changed, because I want to see that changed. Yeah.
It's good to have systems to review all this and try and improve these guys, because ultimately they're only as good as you as the business owner, aren't they? And if there's big mistakes made by staff, ultimately we have to blame ourselves.
Agreed.
Somehow.
Everything comes back to you.
Exactly. But if you do want to have someone who's making purchasing decisions, then I would suggest you set your criteria out, and then you can even do something like Google Sheets where you export the deals and you have conditional formatting on columns for ROI and profit. So it comes up green if it's really good profit, and it comes up orange if it's all right, and red if it's not good. It kind of tells them when they've exported it, maybe we shouldn't buy that one. So just little things like that are good indicators. But there's fundamental rules you got to consider as well, such as your break-even price. What is the break-even? How often are Amazon in stock? These are things you've got to teach people slowly. You can't just drop it all on them on day one, because they won't understand it.
Reflecting back on that, hiring, thinking about the skill set, what kind of things are you looking for in a VA? Define that. And what things should you avoid as well?
The first thing you look for is, how good is their English, written and spoken? Because if you can't communicate, they can't understand what you're saying, they can't articulate themselves with what they're thinking, then you're just not going to get anywhere. So English is really important, or if you speak one of their languages, great. But you need to be able to communicate. I'd also say basic. I mean, there are sites out there there's another rival site to yours, Tom, which has like an IQ test on these people, which is quite helpful when looking to recruit, because it gives you a basic, universally understood level of way the mind works. So I do normally look for that now, like a good basic IQ level. It just shows you're able to solve problems and think. But yeah, hard work's very important. Loyalty and commitment, you're not going to really learn about that until you've had them for some time. But you could look at a CV and see how long they've worked for someone before, past experience in the industry maybe. And if they've worked for someone for a couple of years doing a similar job, then it shows they have loyalty and commitment commitment to somebody.
And is there anything in particular that you're looking for, like that makes them a great admin, makes them a great sourcer, makes them a great purchaser, for example?
When it comes to admin, I don't really look for this thing, but I tend to find that admin people are a bit more introverted. You know, they spend their time head buried in figures and that, and completing lots of tasks, are quite logical thinking. So if you're trying to employ an admin VA and they're very extravagant and with how they communicate with you, they probably haven't got a mind that's focused on the detail. You need someone who's really good with the detail. Whereas, you know, a sourcing VA, quite similar, but they're probably going to be a bit more extrovert than the admin VA. It's just a feel you get, Tom, and I just encourage anybody who's looking to interview guys, make sure you thoroughly have a look at their CV and their experience. Don't just look at their cover letter where it says, I'm very good at this, I'm very good at that. Ask them when you interview them to, if they're doing sourcing, ask them to review a keeper graph whilst you're there, actually see how they analyse things. Do they actually understand them? And when it comes to the admin VA, do they have an understanding of the UK market? Do they get VAT and that sort of stuff? And have they used the systems that you use is probably really important as well. Things like Google Sheets. If they haven't used Google Sheets before, you're in trouble straight away.
I've not used a computer before.
We're not a charity here. We need people that have got some skills, you know.
You had two sources, one doing purchasing and an admin. You've now gone down to one admin, one sourcing. You're back to purchasing yourself. Tell me about that. What does the future hold? Tell me about that.
Yeah, okay. So I did have two sourcing because we were looking to move into another category, another Amazon category, which is totally different to what we're doing now. And I realised we were just losing focus on our main expertise. So it's been kind of a 6 months of trying to really pull ourselves back into what we know and what we're good at, which is why I've gone down to one. But also really changed the focus, Tom, in the last 3 or 4 months after reading Profit First, the book Profit First, which is focusing on making sure I, as a business owner, get money from my business, make sure it's supporting my life.
Damn right.
It should be something that drains money from me. It should be something that adds to it. So most important thing is this pays me well, this business. And to do that, it needs to be very profitable itself. And that means organically being profitable, not by investing loads of capital from Amazon or any other loans. It's just relying on our own cash we got in the business, keeping it moving well. If that means taking losses, it means taking losses. But keeping it moving, keeping it turning over, being ruthless with decisions, removing too much emotion from decisions and just turning things over a lot quicker. So I'm doing a bit in Pan-EU at the minute, doing a little bit in Germany and France. So that's something that could grow, but it does just mean more money chucked into it. So the main focus is 2023 has been not the best year, I don't think, for my Amazon business, but it's been a great year of learning. And like you say, what's a success? A success doesn't bring any learning for you. It's the failures that bring learning. I'm not having a great year of learning, put it that way.
Yeah, I think what's the saying? Success is a poor teacher.
Well, there we go. You put it better than me.
I just copy it from other people, don't worry. I just read books. You also mentioned earlier on that you're doing now bookkeeping. Tell me about that. Like, what's going on there?
I mean, I've got history with numbers and that sort of thing. No sort of accounting stuff background, but I've always been fascinated with numbers and very good at looking at data, that sort of thing. It just must be the way my mind works. And I remember when we first came to this Amazon game, I made this organise your arbitrage spreadsheet, which was for sole traders, keeping track of all their purchases. And adding to that, I did kind of something that would fit in with the self-assessment return. So it would be suitable for accountants to take that spreadsheet and just take the figures and bang it into self-assessment. So I've always had that sort of mind on your responsibilities as a business owner and trying to make sure I'm complying with it. So when I went limited with Amazon, I had to find tools and systems that make sure I'm compliant with VAT and tax returns. So I started using Link My Books and Xero. And that means I've been doing all my own bookkeeping. I didn't realise I was doing bookkeeping. That's what it is, organising your records. So I've been doing all my own bookkeeping for a good 2 years now. And every accountant I've ever spoke to, Tom, has not really grasped how online reselling works when it comes to bookkeeping. They don't realise Amazon pay you an amount out which already has a huge amount of the cost deducted from it. They don't understand that. I think there's a bit of a gap there. So at the start of the year, I went through some official bookkeeping training with AAT. In August, I passed my last exam to be a qualified bookkeeper. So I'm now allowed to run a bookkeeping business, and I'm setting it up for any clients in the OA space who need a bit of help with bookkeeping. They might have an accountant already, but they do their own bookkeeping, or the accountant and sort of fumbling the way through it. And I think it's something that people need. So yeah, if anybody's interested, Baseline Bookkeeping, it's baseline_books on Twitter. Drop me a DM or I'll get a meeting set up and I'll see what we can do to help you out with your bookkeeping, because it's a messy old game, bookkeeping, and a lot of people don't like doing it. I don't mind. But at some point I will outsource it to probably VAs as well, but there will be qualified VAs, Tom, that have bookkeeping qualifications. But before that, I want to get an idea of how much time it's going to take before I outsource, similar to these tasks with Wholesale.
Bookkeeping is probably one of the most boring things that I've ever done. Like I really don't like it. It's an administrative task. I don't enjoy it, but it's one of the most important things. If you do not know your numbers, you have no idea where you're going, and you need to know that, because you don't know if you're profitable or if you're not. And I promise you, making profit isn't as easy as maybe all us YouTubers make it look like. It actually takes hard work, dedication, and a lot of learnings. It's easy to lose money. I think we all know that. Finding good deals, consistently doing it and executing that and scaling is hard. Especially when you add on things like credit cards, Amazon loans, it makes it more and more difficult. So, if anyone is interested, obviously do reach out. Having good people around you is one of the most important skills I've ever learned, who can give you unbiased advice, not the yes, sir, you're doing well, sir, whatever you say, sir. Your books are this. You're like, okay. So then you can take action. And it's only with good data can you actually take good action. Hence why we have Keeper and all the other tools that we use.
Just to add to that, if you're not getting a monthly profit and loss report from your accountant or bookkeeper currently, then you need to address that immediately. We can help out with that. I get it. I know what we're doing every month. I know how much profit we're making. You don't want to get to the end of the year, realise you've lost £75,000 and then try to action it then. It's too late.
I know, every 15th of the month, literally like clockwork, is in the calendar. We sit down with our admin VAs and we go through all the P&Ls. It's like, oh. But they know it. It's like, you have to. It's like, there is a non-negotiable. They're like, can we wait until next month? No, not in a minute. Like, this does not change. You've got to work hard to get it done. So if anyone wants to get in touch, what's the best way of doing it?
If they want to get in touch with me personally, at GravyFI on Twitter. If you want to talk about any of those other services like the bookkeeping, then it's at Baseline, which is BASS, as in bass guitar, Baseline_books on Twitter. Yeah.
I'd say thank you so much for your honesty, sharing the challenges you faced. A lot of people say Amazon's easy. It's not. It's actually really challenging, and especially as you grow. And I'd say thank you for sharing what you've done today, and hopefully I can catch up in a year's time and we can see how it's turned around and what you're doing and how it's all going, and hopefully the Baseline bookkeeping is going really well as well. So best of luck with it all, and thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate the time and chatting to you, mate. Speak soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.